Today, I want you to meet the vociferous, charming, and unbelievable 30-year-old woman at the helm of a strange new countercultural movement that is absolutely reshaping America. A movement so influential that it probably will shape the 2020 election, especially if she's right. She says that Donald Trump will get 30% of the black vote. Donald Trump only got 8% of the black vote in 2016. 15% would be a landslide. She believes between 20 and 30. Well, 8% was before she started speaking out and Kanye West started wearing a Make America Great Again hat and hugging Trump in the Oval Office. Candace Owens is the one that played an enormous role in making that moment happen. She created BLEXIT, as in black exit, the idea that black people shouldn't have to vote against their own well-being just to appease someone else, especially not under the guise that it's progressive. And she has taken her movement into the White House and into Congress. She has really pissed off a lot of people, but she has invigorated many people who felt lost and alone in the world. Today, I am positive you already know who she is, but I invite you to hear her in this setting, recorded in our Mercury studios. It all comes together. This is one of the episodes after you finish, you're probably going to walk away with the conversation in your mind. An enrichment, an argument, a rich dialogue, and maybe even a reason to believe. Today, Candace Owens. I am so excited to talk to you. I think you are one of the bravest and most eager learners I have seen in a long time, and you're super, super smart and gifted at communication. But before I get into all of the things that you have done recently and the transformation in you, I want to know who you were. You grew up, your dad was an alcoholic. You said your life wasn't easy.
Right.
But was it hard?
You know, that's been one of the things that's been the craziest element of my political journey is watching the left and the media try to almost whitewash me. Like if when you read about Candace Owens, it sounds like I was an overprivileged, rich girl that grew up in Connecticut. For some reason, just saying you grew up in Connecticut makes people think that you're wealthy.
There's lots of bad places in Connecticut.
Right, really bad and getting
really
worse,
bad. Yeah.
Actually, right now. It's sitting on an economic bubble thanks to Democrat policies. But my life has been tremendously hard. It's been a very complicated life. I grew up with my mother psychologically and physically abusive to me and my siblings. My dad was an alcoholic. He wasn't abusive, but he, financially impotent, couldn't provide for the family, and it just tremendously selfish. That's what comes with the disease of alcoholism, where him drinking came first. So I've never been able to relax, meaning that I always had to have a job. I always had to take care of myself.
From what age?
From forever. I mean, the first time I had a job, I believe I was 14 years old. I worked at a video store, and I just never not worked. And I always say that
Is that a bad thing?
No, it's not. Yeah. It's not a bad thing at all. But the anxiety of knowing that you don't have parents that can take care of you, that's a little different, right? So everything that I had, it was make or break, right? There was no fallback plan. There's I guess a confidence people have when you know that if you really mess up, your parents can help you for a period or can help you pay rent for a bit. I never had that. And so I was in and out of my house. Me and my mom fought a lot. I was a girl that I lived with my boyfriend when I was 15 years old for months because my mom would kick me out for months at a time.
Wow.
When I was a teenager growing up. So I had a really rough upbringing. Uncles in prison. Just what I always say, I guess can be true of a lot of Black Americans, what you see growing up because our culture is so broken. I don't know many Black Americans who don't know relatives that were in prison, relatives that have been, arrested, in trouble, and just sort of had a lot of dysfunction in my household. I mean, one of my earliest memories, just to give you an idea of the sort of household I grew up in, was my uncle, his girlfriend set him on fire.
Jeez.
literally. And then this is a sort of dysfunction, and he had to come live with us. Very tiny apartment, roach-infested apartment on Chester Boulevard. Me and my two sisters shared a room, so there was 3 of us in there. And he had to come live with us for a bit because he had nowhere else to go, and he couldn't, really walk. He couldn't really do much for a while until he got better. But this was sort of like my upbringing. I was saved because my grandparents, when I was 9 years old, came to our apartment, and my granddad basically said to my parents he didn't want his grandbabies growing up in this climate, and they moved us into their more middle class home. So all 9 of us were living in this house. I was living in the attic. My parents were living in the basement. I mean, we were really trying to make it work. My grandfather just had a different way of life that I would return to after living a very liberal life.
There was a difference in our grandparents.
There was.
Especially, I don't know how old your grandparents were, but mine did not. They were not raised in the 60s. And there was just a different work ethic, a different understanding, and much more of a be your own person. You are responsible for you, nobody else.
No complaining. My grandfather never complained. He just worked every single day of his life. And it's interesting that you said that they didn't grow up in the 60s, because I had a recent conversation with my granddad, just a heart to heart around the time that I was getting married. And I asked him kind of quite seriously, why is this your son talking about my father? I have a good relationship with my father, so I don't want it to paint like I don't. But just in, the constant irresponsibility, never able to do anything, takes from his children, doesn't give back. And my granddad said something. He said to me, it was the hippies. It was the hippie generation that did this. And I just thought, wow, this idea of liberalism, more freedom. We don't have to have rules or responsibilities. He was like, they brought in the smoking and the drinking and to live and let live mentality. So it's interesting that you call that out, because
it was the generation before that had gone to World War II. They came home after a depression, a war. They had seen horrible things. They had gone without for so long. They have children. All of a sudden, we become relatively wealthy. Things are going well in America. And who doesn't want to give their child everything? And so they had nothing that was bad, nothing hard. And of course, that's the generation you're going to pump out. And
I talk about that. I really believe in my book, I actually wrote a chapter called Over Civilization, what happens when you achieve peace. That's the period to watch out for. That's where things can go really bad, because when you're not actually striving to correct things that are actually bad, you'll start creating badness around you. Right? I think that there's something about the human spirit that we want to triumph. We want to end a war. We want to say we did something. And like you said, they didn't have anything because things were good. And that's also for my generation, millennials. Things have been great. So we're creating suffering around us, pretending to see it everywhere.
So you said that you returned to the way of your grandfather, but
it took a while. It did.
Tell me about that period in your life.
Yeah, so I always say to people, I took the most liberal route to conservatism. It took a very liberal route to conservatism. And I just, I was constantly in trouble. I was always a very smart person. I did well in school. But there was an upset. I felt like the world owed me something because so much of my life seemed unfair. Like the parents that I had, it was unfair. The money that I didn't have, that was unfair. I had an education system that was telling me it was because the world is fundamentally unfair, and the system of capitalism in America and white Republicans is making it unfair. And I just had a chip on my shoulder through much of my life, and I found liberalism as to be a home for that, because a liberal perspective sort of welcomes the idea that we shouldn't have to be responsible because the world is just corrupt and backwards. So why should we have to be decent people? It sort of allows you to absolve all responsibility, all self-responsibility. And I wasn't like, I was, partying, but not more than anybody else was. I was a bad person. I don't know how to say it. I just was a really bad person, a person that I'm not proud of. And I didn't treat people well. I wasn't true to my word. And I was mean. And that meanness came from an anger, a deep-seated anger. And then what happened that sort of changed that around was, first off, I got smacked with reality when I left college. without a degree, and because my student loans got declined going into my senior year, but I had over $100,000 in student loan debt.
Oh my.
And we didn't have Bernie saying he was going to wave a magic wand and get rid of it.
Right.
So I hit the ground running, and my instinct to work was always there. My grandfather just raised us we just always worked. It's an Owens quality, as my granddad says. And I hit the ground running in New York City. And
in New York City, $100,000, brutal.
Sleeping on friends' couches. I mean, I was, not doing well. Babysitting here, and then I had sort of a big break in that I just started interviewing for jobs as an assistant at private equity firms, because I heard that you could start out making $50K, if you just were an assistant. And I was like, I can do this. I know I don't have a degree, and I got hired on the spot at this firm. And it really changed things for me, because I just saw how much my employers had. And there was just an interest for me always in terms of wanting to make money, wanting to have, and not, just wanting to figure out how I could be wealthy, how I could pay off my student loans, how I could have something. And I just worked my butt off. And then the big thing that happened was my grandmother died. And it completely changed me, because she was really the only maternal figure that I had. My grandmother, deeply, deeply faithful. And the last thing she said to me, we were not expecting her to die. She was hospitalized for what was supposed to be 48 hours. She just said, I worry about you. I worry about you in New York City. And, I worry about the person that you're becoming.
Wow.
And I said to her, because I was being flashy, I have this expensive bag, and I thought she would think that it was all cool, and she just thought none of it was cool. And I think
our grandparents were not different.
Into it. She wasn't into my Stella McCartney bag.
Yeah.
And it was her last word she ever spoke to me, and then she died. And it took a lot out of me. I mean, I still mourn my grandmother's death. It was just, it rocked my family, because she was the rock. Yeah. And then I wanted to make her proud, Yeah. So I just
You're still emotional.
I do. Yeah, I really do. My grandparents have been just incredible people. So I just sort of dedicated myself to just being a better person, whatever I thought that was, what would make my grandparents proud, what makes my granddad proud. And I changed. And I started really getting serious about, not going out as much, not partying, really dedicating myself to getting myself out of debt, and understanding the people that they were in context of politics was they were deeply conservative. And they wouldn't say that. My grandmother didn't care about politics, but they were deeply conservative.
So were they Republicans or conservative?
Apolitical, but they were conservative.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, apolitical. They were not Democrats or Republicans.
Aren't most blacks conservative?
Right.
They just don't vote that way.
We just don't know it. No one turns the lights on and says everything about the way you were raised is actually conservative.
How do you miss that though? I mean, it's
right.
It's so clear.
Right. Yeah. It's funny that you asked that, because I've thought deeply about this, obviously, and it's so what the left has done. You have to give them credit for just how brilliant they have been. They've executed a royal flush on Black America. And what they did was, which started in the 60s, obviously, with Lyndon Baines Johnson, the Great Society Act, the breakdown of the family, marrying Black America to the government. Don't marry your baby daddy, marry the government. We're going to give you more money. Don't, if there's no man in the household. Everything starts there. When you remove the bedrock of the family, there's still an instinct to pursue paternity and maternity elsewhere.
Yep.
So where did the kids get that maternity and paternity? The streets. The kids race to the streets. They culture. Why do you think the left has invested so much time in having a stranglehold on culture? And this is why culture is so important. And this is what conservatives, Republicans missed, right? How important culture is. Andrew Breitbart knew, right? He said famously, politics is downstream from culture. And he was so accurate in saying that. And so Black America invested heavily in culture, because they were no longer sitting around the dinner table and learning from mom and dad. They were being raised by Jay-Z, by Beyonce, by whatever rapper they idolized, whatever hip hop artist they idolized was now raising them. And the left and the Democrats put all of their eggs in that basket. And this is why Hillary Clinton had Beyonce and Jay-Z dancing with her a few nights before election night, even though I'm Sure, she cannot name even one Jay-Z song or even one Beyonce album.
Right.
And one might even be called Beyonce. She wouldn't be able to do it, right? She wouldn't be able to do it. But they understood that. And then the second element is to make sure who else raises the kids. If it's not the hip hop artists, you're being raised in school. The left has a stranglehold on the education system. Jesse Jackson showing up at Stanford, hey ho, Western civ has got to go. Now Western civilization isn't taught. Right, so it was perfect. It was they were able to brainwash an entire generations of Black children by those two pathways, education and culture.
I knew you hated LBJ, and I do too. There are a few presidents that stick out. Jackson, the second Johnson, the first Johnson is pretty bad too. And Woodrow Wilson. But LBJ, I have a theory on, and I want to pass it by you and see what you think. How did the guy who stopped the Civil Rights Act in 1958 or 59, he stopped it. He was the one who blocked it in the Senate. He was so unbelievably racist. He hated Black people. How did that guy bring all of this to the table and say, we're going to heal, we're going to free people, we're going to heal people? I think that he and those who wrote that knew exactly what they were doing.
Glenn, of course. Right. And like I say,
but there's no history of that. There is
history.
Record.
There's rewritten history. And if you ask the average Black person, when I got out of high school, if you had asked me, Candace, who is the greatest president of all time, I would have said Lyndon Baines Johnson. It is taught, if you are a Black American, that Lyndon Baines Johnson saved you.
But I'm telling you, there is no record. I've never seen anybody.
The record is what you learn in school. That is of course there's a record, Glenn. I learned the record. What are you talking about?
Right.
You mean the research you do outside of the education system?
That's right.
You think that matters?
Right.
They have 18 years. Well, I got not if your children go to preschool, they have 15 years to pollute your children's minds. With whatever they want. 15 years. Imagine sending your kids to indoctrination camps for 15 years.
That's what we do.
That's the challenge. We have to be able to reverse 15 years of indoctrination, right? This is the left is brilliant. Lyndon Baines Johnson was brilliant, right? You cannot discount the fact that they have been absolutely brilliant. When I study LBJ and I just go, how is it possible, Candace, that you would have answered the question that he was the greatest president ever for Black America?
He's one of the worst.
He was an avowed racist.
Oh, he was
openly
awful.
Racist. I mean, I really talk about this in my book. The things that he would say. He had a Black person he wouldn't even call by their first name because it didn't matter, right? I'll have those niggers voting Democrat for the next 200 years, right? There is a clear record that the man was an avowed racist. But here's the thing, Glenn. He was right? He did it. He did it. He married Black America to the Democrat Party, right?
So
and
evil.
For that, it's evil, but it's brilliant, right? And for that, you have to almost respect the devious nature of a Democrat Party.
Yeah, I'm like that with Woodrow Wilson, who is also, he's one of the worst. He's the guy who really kind of set this train on the track, and horrible racist and everything else. And you do have to look at it and say, that's brilliant. It's absolutely evil, but it is brilliant.
Right. And they've done it. There's so many people like that throughout human history, where the most evil people in the entire world, the most evil dictators, when you study them, you also have to understand they were brilliant, right? They were horrible. They were horrible, but they were brilliant that they were able to execute so much evil on so many people before people caught on. And that's how it always works. So much evil is being executed right now by the Democrat Party upon Black America, and so much evil has been executed since the 1960s, and before that too. Really, when we're talking about welfareism, it really starts with the New Deal and FDR, right? That was sort of the first time you started seeing Black America go, oh, maybe the Democrats have our best interests at heart, and LBJ just took it to a whole different level. But I almost appreciate how cunning and devious he was, and he got me too. I mean, I believed it. I was celebrating him just a few years ago.
So just tell me what that day was like when you, because I know there were things that I read, things that I discovered that I went, oh my gosh, and opened a door that I knew when I'd walk across that threshold, if I accept this change on LBJ, I'm going to walk through a door and there's no going back. Tell me about that day when you found that out about him. Was that a big day for you?
Oh, it's all been a big day. So here's what I say, because I do want to point to what you just said, because it's so important. My job with Black America isn't to wake them up to every little fact. My job is to just hit the first domino chip. That's all that had happened with me. Just takes one domino chip and then the whole board comes down, right? It all lays flat, and you go, well then, could that have been wrong? Could that have been? Is that? That's literally what happened to me.
Correct.
It was just one thing that didn't add up, and that first thing was the Trump thing, being a racist didn't add up, right? And then so I watched him do the "what do you have to lose" thing, and then I watched what the media did, and I said, if the media could do this to Trump, who else has the media done this to? Is it possible? And then I suddenly started looking at conservative articles, looking at conservative speakers, people that I had dismissed, right? In the same way that so many people were dismissing Trump, that I had dismissed as racist. And I went back and I found all of those Uncle Toms and coons that I knew that I needed to stay away from. And I listened to them in their entirety. And I didn't just listen to the media's interpretations of them. And I was floored, right? And then it brought me to my real history, to real Black history. And reading about someone like Lyndon Baines Johnson, and really sort of that being the starting point for where we are today. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's you feel a lot. You feel angry, for sure. But I think the biggest thing that I walked away with was a sense of passion. It wasn't enough to just know it, right? I needed to spread it. And it was like, this is the gospel. So I've got to let every single Black American know that your whole life can change if you just wake up to the truth. And there have been people the whole time that have been trying to tell us, and we have just routinely dismissed them.
Tell me about, as this changed, well, first, give me your darkest day. Do you have a darkest day where you were like, or was it your grandmother's death, or what was the day that you were the quintessential person you don't like?
I've never done anything that, like, I was never like,
Good.
So yeah, there's no evil, like, oh my God, it was a chapter where I was just doing evil to people or anything like that. When I said I didn't like who I was pretending.
Right, okay.
And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with being a leftist. Like, you're pretending that you feel woke and feminist, and because you don't have a man, you're doing everything, but you're not actually happy, sort of. Right. That was what I was doing.
Yeah, living a lie.
Living a lie.
So tell me the first day where you saw it in your grandfather's eyes that he was not just proud of you because you've always been great, but he's proud of you because you've turned a corner and you're turning into an amazing woman.
So that, I will say this, the thing that, why I get so emotional with my grandparents is because they have been, unconditional love, and they're deeply, deeply religious. And every phase of my life, they're just nothing but love. There's never a time where you can't come and they just don't love you. But when did I make my grandparents proud? It's unfortunate that, my grandmother's not alive for this, but, my grandfather, it was something that just deeply, used to always really upset my grandfather. He just has this thing about women drinking. He's never drank his entire life. My grandmother never drank. They never, did any of that. But it's just something that just really bothered him. I don't drink alcohol. I did for the 6 months leading up to my wedding, but I quit jumping into, because you just can't say no. Everyone's just constantly giving you bottles of champagne. Right. I didn't drink on my wedding day though, but I just sort of decided when I was jumping into this political thing that I just didn't want to drink alcohol. I really wanted to be present, like always present. And I remember sort of talking to my grandfather, and I get on the phone with him and ask him more questions about his childhood, his upbringing, what he lived through, what he saw. And you could just sense that, just based on the questions I was asking, that he knew that I was there, right? That I was like, there it is. There, finally, I have a true legacy. It's been just a beautiful thing to really be able to appreciate everything that my grandfather knows, his wisdom, everything he lived through. I mean, even his wisdom on when I talk about how the left attacks me and I say, black people that say, Uncle Tom, I'm a coon, and he says, baby, there's always been those kind of black people that would say, we shouldn't be working with the white people. He was like, I never listened to them. I just got on about my business. That wisdom of like, that's always going to be there, Candace. Accept that there's always going to be people that reject greatness because they don't have it in them. So it's been just every moment of this has been beautiful. He came to my last political event, my last BLEXIT, one of my speeches, and then one of my BLEXIT rallies, and it was just so special to have him there.
So let's go now into that time period of your life, and we've talked about you're listening to the media and they're throwing Donald Trump, in as a racist every step of the way. He's wildly popular with the black community. He was a TV star and, part of pop culture, and especially in the black community, right?
That's right.
And you're not buying into any of that, any of the he's a racist.
Right. It just didn't sound right. I was just saying, if he was really this horrible person, why are we just finding out now? Mm-hmm. It was patronizing. It was just, it's felt to me what the media was trying to do is like what adults do to their children. If you don't clean your room, Santa's not going to come.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, if you vote for Trump, all these horrible things are going to happen. But we were totally fine celebrating him for decades when he wasn't running for president. It was so clear that was about power.
So did this happen after you had discovered the LBJ fallacy?
No.
Is this the first event?
Yeah, Trump was first. It started with questioning my relationship with the media. That was the first domino chip on the board for me.
I think that's the biggest thing that Donald Trump has done.
Expose the media.
By just saying, look at over there, they're frauds. And then they do it. Then they, look at there, they're lying. And then they lie. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, guys, if you want to help yourself, you should just stop what you're doing.
Right. And they can't help themselves.
They can't help themselves.
It's chronic.
Right.
It's a chronic obsession. They can't, and I always say this, what's so crazy, I genuinely think Trump would have lost if they just left him alone.
I think so too. There
was enough conservatives that were on enough, mm-hmm. Democrats that were like, mm-hmm. no way, that mm-hmm. if they had just chilled a little bit, not mm-hmm. tried to paint him as this horrible monster mm-hmm. and calling him a Nazi and all of these things, mm-hmm. he would have lost.
You might have even gotten him on impeachment. Even though I don't, I think they were wrong about it, but you might have gotten them on impeachment if you hadn't have every 10 minutes said, here's something that's going to be the last straw.
I said that. That's, again, overplaying their hand. Like, it's like
every time.
It was like if they hadn't done everything prior to that, if they mm-hmm. hadn't accused him of, I'm calling her not Christine Blasey Ford, who's the Stormy Daniels, yeah. right? Mm-hmm. They had the Stormy Daniels thing, the Russian collusion. It was just too much.
All of it.
And actually, I wasn't even interested by it. People, like I said, are getting fatigued. It's just mm-hmm. like, it's the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah, no, I
was interested in the impeachment hearings. I was like, obviously nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, Chuck Schumer came out and said, we have to have an investigation with what's going on between him and William Barr. And you're like, really?
Right.
You really think that's wise?
And it's actually funny because I had lunch with the president about 4 weeks ago now. I think it was about 4 weeks ago at the White House. And we were just saying, it was me, him, my husband, and he's got Fox News on, and he says it was the day they announced that they did the vote, and he was impeached. They were sending the articles to Senate. And he's like, can you believe this? They're impeaching me for a perfect phone call. And he said exactly what he said, for a perfect phone call. He said, what do you think about this? And I said, to be honest, I was like, I find it to be incredibly boring. I was like, nobody cares. He's like, you don't think anybody cares? I'm like, this is obviously not going to go anywhere. It's going to work in your favor, because people are just fatigued. If it was the first thing they did, it would have been big. But we're like post Michael, what's his name? Michael Wolff book. It's just too much.
This is everything.
Yeah, I want to turn the TV off now,
If everything, I've said for a long time, if you tell me that McDonald's food is bad, okay, Except the French fries are the best French fries out there.
Delicious.
And if the person says no, even their French fries, you have no credibility. If you can't find the McDonald's French fries in the Trump administration, you have no credibility.
I love this analogy. If you cannot find the McDonald's French fries, that's so true.
It is.
Yeah, I'm like, can say one thing nice about them. And you remember Hillary couldn't do it.
Right.
In one of their things, he actually paid her a good compliment. I forgot what he said about her. And that was a great moment in the debates where he said, okay, why don't you both say something nice about each other? And I think Trump said something about, maybe it wasn't about her children, but he said something nice about her, and it was a great compliment. And she couldn't do it because the left can't do it. They're incapable of acknowledging if this man has done anything right in his entire life.
He's done stuff that I disagree with that they should love.
Right.
He's done stuff for unions that they would never have ever gotten past.
Right.
But no, he's evil. He's no good.
Orange man bad.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense for the average person.
It's so true.
Okay, so I have to ask you this question because you just talked about having lunch with Donald Trump. You were admittedly just a nobody. Now you're sitting having lunch. About 4 weeks ago, I think it was about 4 weeks ago, I was having lunch with the president. What do you have at any point like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I give it all to God. It's the only way. And you'll understand this. First off, being in politics, you're one scandal away from your whole career being over. And they want me dead. I mean, there is no person that they hate more than me. Because I represent an existential threat to them. And so, for me, everything to me is just God, thank God, and thanking the people, the patriots around America who believed in me from the beginning. I was just a girl who a few years ago uploaded a video on YouTube, and just said, I'm going to try to give Black America a different perspective, and didn't know where it was going to go. By my third video, 26 million views worldwide. I'm getting the call from Fox News. It has been a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And there was nothing behind me. There was no, business behind. There was nothing. It was just me swimming, treading water rather, not swimming, treading water, and trying to figure out what it all means, but also taking the time to know that it could all be over tomorrow. And so the one thing that I promised myself was, first off, to always remain humble. I've seen there's a lot of ego in politics. There are a lot of people that are in this to be a celebrity. I've seen a lot of nastiness, but to also, the one thing that I can control is to do the work. And that's what you and I were talking about. It's one thing to have the feeling, which is how I started. I had a feeling something was wrong. And I was making videos just kind of being like, all right, guys, everyone can't be racist. But I wanted to then convert that feeling into a fact. I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to go back and do the work and read what's out there from the great Black conservatives that have done so much work and have been largely disregarded and dismissed by our community. I wanted to make my grandparents proud, and that's an everyday task, right? There is never going to be a day where I feel like I know enough. Because it's impossible. You just told me something that I never knew before we started this podcast, and now I'm like, oh, I really didn't know that. I want to go. I really got to get to the bottom of that now.
No, I love that feeling, though.
I always want to be the dumbest person in the room.
Yes.
Everyone, you're smarter than me because you've been around longer than me. You've been researching this. You've been on the side of truth longer than me.
But you know stuff that I don't know. I know stuff you don't know. That's the problem, I think, with progressivism is when you are told not to talk to somebody, or you take this attitude that I'm just smart and they're stupid. There's no reason to listen to them.
Right.
But if you actually listen, you may still disagree, but you're going to learn a lot because you're going to see a perspective, if they're honest, you'll see a perspective that is actually well thought out, at least through their life experiences. And you'll be like, oh my gosh.
But narcissists can't do that.
Yeah.
And the left consists of a ton of narcissists. And I've done that time and time again. There is no leftist program or leftist person that I wouldn't speak to because I feel that I'm on the side of truth. Right. And if I'm not, I want to know because I'm humble enough to say I'm wrong and I want to pivot that and get smarter at that. they stay in their bubbles because they're arrogant and they're narcissists. And this is why Hollywood is a perfect breeding ground for leftism, because a lot of them are narcissists as it is. It's a culture of narcissism. And so it becomes very easy for them to preach and to say, we're all right, and to stay in their comfortable spaces. But they never come over to the other side. If you were so certain, right, so certain that what you knew was gospel and it was right, why not? Why wouldn't you want to go into every single room to say it? Why doesn't Al Sharpton want to get into a room with Larry Elder? He's been trying to debate Larry Elder's been trying to debate Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson for decades. They won't do it because they know they're lying, right? They know that Larry Elder's telling the truth. And the mask slides off when they get into the room with people that are willing to call them out and know the truth.
Let me take you to another day that had to be really surreal. Where were you when
JFK got shot?
when Kanye tweeted your name?
Yeah. So that story is way crazier than people even realize. So I had signed to work with Turning Point USA. And when Charlie Kirk and I got together, Charlie was just the most... He didn't know anything about culture. And Charlie wouldn't have known culture if it walked up and punched him in the face and said, hey, I'm culture. Right. I mean, it was bad. He didn't know the difference between Jay-Z and Kanye. And we're sitting in a car ride, because we were traveling together 5 days a week, and he was really drilling me on debating, what to expect, making sure that my debate skills were strong, and training me a lot in many ways. And I said to him, Charlie, you got to know this stuff. Culture's important. And I said to him, you need to know who Kanye West is. Before Kanye ever tweeted me, it was in December. And Charlie will tell you the story the exact same way. And I started making him listen to Kanye's music. And I said, he's going to be, if there's any person in Hollywood that will come out and who I believe is conservative, it's Kanye, because I followed his career my entire life. He was the only person that I ever considered myself to be a fan of because of his general perspective. He got me through tough times as a kid, his music, because Kanye he talked a lot about in his music, having the courage to not be liked, right? Kanye is public enemy number one. I mean, they've tried to kill him. You can't cancel Kanye because Kanye's been canceled 82,000 times and he's still here, right? And that's been his career arc. And so I was listening to a lot of Kanye West music to get myself into politics, and I was running, and Charlie started running to him every single day. 3 months later, we're both listening to all Kanye music, and I was telling this to Nigel Farage's assistant, of all people, that I loved Kanye West. 2 days later, Nigel Farage's assistant sends me a screenshot of Kanye West tweet. I love the way Candace Owens thinks. And I thought it was a joke because I was like, okay, maybe this is like British humor. Like, I don't know. I was like, this is weird. Like, I don't really understand why he humor. Like, I don't understand why he photoshopped. Okay, right. You get it. Like, I like Kanye. And then I went, is there any chance this is real? And I went to Kanye's Twitter feed and I scrolled down and I saw it, and I can't even describe to you the feeling that I felt there.
That had to be amazing.
It was just like, when you feel like the universe is conspiring to assist you, one of those moments. Because I just knew he was conservative. I knew it. I was just, I think I cried. I was just so like shocked. And I tweeted back at him like, please, can we meet? And we did. I flew out to Los Angeles, met with him, met with his wife. We went to Uganda together. And he was exactly what I was expecting, in the same way that Trump is exactly who you think he is. Kanye West is exactly who you think he is. There's not a behind closed door Trump, and there's not a behind closed door Kanye West. And you know why I cried? I know why I cried, because that door that people weren't understanding, Charlie not understanding why he needed to understand culture not understanding why he needed to understand politics, Kanye punched a hole in that culture and politics. It was able to flow freely, the energy, and it needed to flow freely if there was going to be change. And suddenly people that had never looked up Candace Owens were looking up Candace Owens, right?
And people who had never really listened to Kanye
were listening to Kanye. The contribution that Kanye West made to politics cannot be understated. And it got me so angry, the arrogance of some conservatives who went out and said, ignore him, he's crazy, don't listen to him. And I said, this man just delivered you a gift.
Yeah. Here's the thing with, I never said anything about you for probably a year, even during the Kanye stuff at the beginning of it. Never said anything about you because I didn't know you, and you were young into it, and you can dip your feet into it, and then you can go off a path where all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, you're a fascist. You know what I mean? And so you just never know when somebody is really young, where they're going to grow, who their influences are. And the same thing with Kanye. I talked about, I think this is great, but he might be crazy. He might be doing this for a publicity stunt, but he also might be real. And it turns out it was real. And that impact is fantastic. But we shouldn't put nobody should become a conservative because Kanye is a conservative.
Of course not.
You know what I mean?
No, of course not.
But the door that he opened, that he said, and it was amazing because you watched him and it really even wasn't about any kind of principle other than, who the hell are you to tell me what I can be?
That was it. And this is what Republicans got so wrong, the ones that criticized him. They were trying to pretend like Kanye came in and said, I'm a Republican, people need to listen to. Like, he didn't.
No.
He just said, I can love whoever I want to love. I can be who I want to be. You can't tell me how I have to think because of the color of my skin. What are you disagreeing with? Is Kanye crazy? Absolutely. I can confirm Kanye West is crazy. You have to be crazy to put your entire career and your entire family on the line to be who you are, right? You have to be crazy to be where he was and where he is in life and put on a MAGA hat. You have to be out of your freaking mind, right? Kanye's crazy is his genius, right? His unwillingness throughout his entire career for people that didn't follow him to never buckle to the mob. It didn't start with politics, right? It started way before that. Kanye West, when he fell in love with someone, it was a stripper named Amber Rose, right? Everyone told him he was not allowed to date Amber Rose. It was inappropriate. You know, like, he loved her. That was it. And then he turned her into a fashion icon, and now she's, she's got a career herself, right? Kanye West was told he wasn't allowed to be a rapper. First, he was a producer. He used to produce for Jay-Z, right? And he said, I'm not only just going to be a rapper, I'm going to win a Grammy. And then when he won the Grammy, he wore a sign that said, "Told you so." Right? Kanye West was told he wasn't allowed to like Kim Kardashian, right? Because she had a porn tape, all of this stuff, and he needed to marry a black woman. Kanye married her, right? Kanye's story, his entire story is one of saying, this is how I feel, and because you tell me I can't feel this doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel it or do it.
Which is exactly why someone like Kanye West would relate to someone like Donald Trump.
Right. That's what he loved about him.
Right. I've always thought if the Democrats were smart, they would say, you know what'll make us really angry? If you start pushing all kinds of welfare onto, we are walking.
Right.
You know what I mean? You could tell him not to do something.
Right.
And it makes him want to do it.
Right. And more. And it's not necessarily also because that spirit, that is one thing that I think when he talked about, Kanye called it dragon energy, but this is a similarity between Trump and Kanye and me, because we're very different people, all three of us. Our style, our approach, we're very different. But that energy, right? And it's not contrarian. It's not contrarian. I don't just do because someone tells me not to. If I decide I want to do it, and then a million people tell me not to or that I can't do it, that's not going to suddenly make me buckle, right? It almost makes me want to do it more to prove the point that my instincts were correct and to study more and to learn more. And Kanye has that, right? He didn't, marry Kim to piss everybody off. He married her because he loved her. Right. And because everyone in the hip hop community didn't want her, wanted to reject her, didn't mean anything to him. He told Kanye he couldn't get into fashion. He just he's now a billionaire because of his sneaker. I mean, his story is one that is just absolutely incredible because he's always been successful because he's had the nerve to stand up to the mob.
That used to be called the American spirit. You know, you would be over in Europe and you couldn't do it because you didn't have the right position, the right name, the right connections, and you couldn't do it. Here in America, you could say, you know what, I want to do whatever it is I want to do, and you could do it. That was an American trait. Now, what kills me is everybody said he was a genius, and then he became crazy. And there is very little difference between the two.
There's very little difference. His genius is his crazy. His crazy is his genius.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that Kanye is he is one of the most fascinating people to be around. And it's sad that people's legacies tend to settle after they die. You know what I mean? And then, oh my God, you realize. But I've realized Kanye's greatness since listening to his album, following his story, just his lyrics. It really is about just having the nerve, having the American spirit.
That's what all of it was. Imagine, hey, let's get on a boat and cross the ocean. It's going to take us months. Half of us will die. When we get there, probably going to be met by Native Americans who, at least in Jamestown, were not good. You know, they'll probably kill the rest of us. Let's go do that.
Crazy.
And
absolutely genius.
Let's go to the moon in 10 years. Crazy.
Yeah.
And genius.
Crazy people move the world forward. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
And and why that also was important for me was because it also showed to me, and I say this all the time, but I was better able to assess why the Republican Party was losing for so long with Black America, right? There was this the reaction to me, when I arrived on the scene, it wasn't pretty. Like, it wasn't like I decided to be conservative and suddenly Republicans were like, yay, come, join us. There were the purity tests, but there was also what people never understood about me was that I am cultural. I am. I love culture and I love politics, and people kind of, there was this pressure that you got to be just one, right? You got to just either be a person that wants to be taken very seriously and all about politics, or you're the girl that can hang out with Kanye West. This is who I am. I'm a girl that's super intellectual, but I love culture. I pay attention to culture, and I communicate culturally to people. And I think that that's what people gravitate towards. And
it's what the Republicans have always missed since Ronald Reagan.
Absolutely. And Trump, by the way.
Yeah.
Cultural.
Yeah. Let me talk about one other name, what the day was like when you realized that your name was in the manifesto of the guy from New Zealand that killed 50 people.
Yeah.
What was that day like?
So I've never actually talked about this. So I had just gotten engaged, and I was in London at the time, and I was really meeting my husband's parents and family for the first time. So it was already a very stressful trip for me. And my fiance and I were sleeping in bed, and at about 3:30, 4 a.m., my phone starts zinging like crazy. And when it sort of jars you out of, when you go, something's going on, I look at my phone, and Charlie's publicist had messaged me and said, you got to issue a statement ASAP. And I said, groggy, I'm like, issue a statement for what? And he's like, the mosque shooting in New Zealand. I think he's like being funny. I'm like, what the hell would I, Candace Owens in America, have to issue a statement about the mosque shooting in New Zealand for? So I go on to Twitter, and it's just explosive. It always explosive, but this was like all the journalists, and Candace inspired a mass shooting. And the first thing I wrote was like, LOL, are you crazy? Like, this is so crazy. You can't even think this is like, it was too crazy to even try to understand the crazy, And then it was real suddenly. It was, my name was being spoken about internationally. I had requests from everywhere in America, MSNBC, CNN, everywhere from France to Asia. I mean, it was just completely crazy, asking me to issue a statement, and I eventually did. And of course said, while I'm very sorry for this horrible tragedy to have happened, it is pointedly ridiculous to pretend that Black conservatism in America is somehow influencing, mosque shoot. It's just, Islam, and it's not, I don't even speak about Islam. It's just, it was so crazy and ludicrous. But it was the first time that, the next day I woke up and I had these spots all over my body. I didn't know what the heck was going on. So I went to the dermatologist, and he says to me, have you been under any stress lately? Quite hilariously, and
I love that.
Just a little bit,
Right,
being accused for killing people.
Right.
So it was the first time I actually had a stress-induced physical reaction to something that had happened, and it really showed to me how serious the left was about taking me out. Because they were willing to assign to assign credence to the words of a psychopathic maniac in New Zealand in an effort to take me out, in an effort to cancel Candace. So, in situations like that, you either you get stronger or you die. And I got stronger.
Let's talk a little bit about the media, because I've had my share of media trying to destroy you, and they can do a really good job of it. How have you dealt with it? How much of it hits you?
It doesn't really anymore. It's really weird. And I think what I have gone through is the same thing that Trump has gone through and the same thing that Kanye went through, where the media can only try to kill you so many times, right? Before they're done. What else could you throw at me? You've accused me of killing people I had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
You accused me of being a self-hating black. You've accused me of being a Nazi. There's just not much left to throw at Candace Owens. And I think they know that, and that almost makes them hate me more because nothing can land anymore. And I am saved, by the way. I am fortunate because the things that I went through with the media had another person gone through. Like, for example, when they tried to pretend that I supported Hitler, right? Charlie Kirk would not have survived that. Just because Charlie Kirk is white and he's male. I survived it only because it just doesn't stick the same when you start calling black people Nazis, right? As hard as they tried, and they tried really hard with that, it just didn't land the same. So in a weird way, I'm still here because I have a little bit of black privilege in that regard, right? But yeah, now I just don't pay attention to them. It just doesn't. It's just not the same anymore because I figured them out. And every time they write about me, the media created me.
So there was a study out on New York Times readers that when the New York Times came out and endorsed, who was it? Buttigieg, maybe, and Klobuchar?
It was Elizabeth
Warren and Klobuchar. That the people who read the New York Times and read their opinion piece, there was a 5% change. But it was toward Biden.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Those people made their recommendations, and those who read it actually changed their vote 5% away from what they did. And I wondered, is that just an oddball sitting out there, or is that a sign that even the New York Times readers are so sick and tired of being told what to do from these people in their ivory towers that if you recommend something, I probably don't. I'm probably going my own way.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I wonder about, at the end of the day, did the media help or hurt me? Right?
Helped you.
They helped me.
They helped you.
At the end of the day, did the media help or hurt Trump?
Helped him.
They helped him.
They created him.
And in many ways, they created me because they just couldn't deal with the fact that there was a black conservative that was gaining a little bit of popularity. But when they started doing attacks on me, I had like 40,000 followers on Twitter, right? They just, because they hated me so much. So in many ways, they can sometimes, they can throw gasoline on embers in that way. And so I owe part of why I'm here to the leftist mainstream media hating me.
But do you think that they have so overplayed their hand that, I think they really think they can affect an election still. And I don't think they can.
And it goes back to what I was saying to you about narcissism, right? So you would think after the humiliating blow of what Trump did to them in 2016, right?
You humbled them.
A little bit.
A little bit.
At least if you can't humble yourself, hire the marketing firm to come in and tell you how you should. They didn't pivot one damn strategy.
No,
it's the exact same.
They quadrupled down. They didn't even double down. They quadrupled down.
We said half of America was racist. What if we call them all racist? It's the exact same strategy of 2016 on steroids, right? We're going to call them more names. We didn't call them racist enough, right? We didn't tell them they hate America. I'm like, how can you be this arrogant? It's after a loss like that, you would just think, someone on the campaign, someone at the DNC, right, would say, "Hey guys, maybe let's not call every single person, half of America, or all these Trump supporters names." You can run a campaign without doing that. I think they've made it personal, and I think that I lived in that world for a while, and there comes a point to where you want it, and it's early on. And you'll get a bite of fame, acceptance, cool kid, just on the edge of it, for us, just on the edge of it, access, money. They'll give you anything because you're performing at the top of the game. Right.
And the minute you go, this is kind of cool, you're dead if you don't get out.
Right.
Because It doesn't stay. Okay. You always have to top. And so you will do, and after a while, you'll make one little compromise, and before you know it, you're not that person anymore.
Right. You know what? That's actually the story of Beto O'Rourke.
Yes. Yes.
You just nailed that story. Because I mean, that his arc. I mean, he just went from he just was chasing that feeling of almost beating Ted Cruz and the crowds, and then by the end of it, he was like this weird rambling leftist.
It was
like, I mean, take your guns. I'm like, do you even believe that? You're from Texas. What do you? Come on, man. Like, what are you saying? And he died by it. He died by it very quickly.
Because he wanted it.
He wanted it so bad.
So bad.
Just that little feeling of people cheering his name, and he wanted it so bad.
And I think that is why the press is so miserable. They want it. This Hollywood too. They want it, they got it, and it's empty.
Right.
And now someone is challenging that worldview, and none of them, they all look at each other. They're in it together. And no, it's one thing to say, maybe I'm wrong. But when you're surrounded by a shipload of people who are all saying, we're not wrong, they might question themselves, but when in a group, no one's going to say that because the ship is going down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was really the Hollywood ship is one to watch because it's sinking. It's sinking very slowly. We're at such an interesting time in this country. Really, there's just so much I want to say. Everything's changing. The idolatry, the sin of idolatry, really, which is so funny because you just go back to the Bible and you're like, yep, that was right too. Like my grandparents had a thing about idolizing people, and they used to say that I idolized Christina Aguilera, which I kind of did. Whatever. I used to race home for TRL and be a genie in a bottle, whatever. And what was wrong with idolatry, though? And this is, literally, we're learning this lesson so much. What's wrong with idolatry?
And false gods.
Hollywood are the demigods. They've been the false gods.
Yeah. And now government and politician, for some of them, has become their god.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So what's going to happen with Hollywood? I mean, even these things, these traces of Taylor Swift, trying to send everybody against Martha in Tennessee. Do you remember the Tennessee Senate race? Where Taylor Swift wrote a whole diatribe saying that this woman, Marsha Blackburn, this woman is a sexist, misogynist, did her Taylor Swift thing, and she still won. Marsha still won, right? Which says something, because I'm telling you, even 5 years ago, anything Taylor Swift said was just, it's what you do.
And it ended up, they could have said anything in the old days and wouldn't tarnish them.
That's right.
Now, you look at Taylor Swift entirely differently.
Totally differently. And well, what's funny? Talk about somebody who's genius and always forward. Who took the trophy from her? Kanye West all those years ago. I go back on that moment.
Right.
America, we booed the wrong person.
That's right.
It was Ye knew. You take it from her. Interrupt her. Right?
Gosh.
There's just so much happening here. I look at that moment. I'm like, man, Kanye really is a forward thinker there.
Wow.
Right? And she was a sad puppy victim. And what was funny about that moment, by the way, to go back to that moment of him taking the trophy from her, he told the truth. For those of us that follow culture, it was crazy that Taylor Swift won that award. It was so clear that the Grammy gods, whatever, that just gave it to her to please a certain audience. He was right. Beyonce came out with a music video that was it was unbelievable, and they gave it to Taylor Swift, who was dressed as a princess because she had all of these 8-year-old fans, and she literally played like Cinderella in a really cheesy, horrible music video. And he got killed because he told the truth. To me, when I think about that now in the retrospect, just so much could be said about this fight for us to tell the truth, right? And these people like Taylor Swift playing dress up, and you think they're the victim. You think they're the victim, but they're not, So it's an interesting moment to look back on, and there could be a whole book written about that. There really could.
3 books that you read that changed your life.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so for Black America, you have to, any time is soul, but Race and Intellectuals is a one that just completely, it destroys it. You can never, ever, ever say it's because I'm Black after you read that. How the West Was Won by Rodney Stark. That one, just if you don't know why you should love America or why the West is the best, I would say that changed. And then I kind of want to pick one that has nothing to do with politics, that totally shaped me. I don't know. Who would be the third book? I want to pick something apolitical. I'll have to think about it. Like something that just is so random that like totally, like I was just like, I read a lot of fiction too. I love fiction books too.
Yeah.
I can't think of one at the moment that's coming
What's
to
your
me.
favorite fiction? Kind of fiction or fiction?
I really hate to say this, like, because it's so brilliant, but I hate her so much. But you have to give credit to Harry Potter. It was just, they're so well written. The movies, they are just so well written.
Yeah.
And if you're like me and you're just wildly imaginative, it's just, that series was so great.
One of my favorite writers, and it kills me because he calls me Satan's younger brother, Stephen King.
Right. Oh, yeah. I read
Stephen
tons.
King.
Yeah. My mother was obsessed with Stephen King. And I will say that about my mother. She was, that was the gift that she gave me, was love for books.
Yeah. And he's
great.
He's great. He's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But, there was a time when we didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't care. Unless you're, just despicable and, aiding the Communist Party in China, rounding people up.
Right.
I still don't care what your political view is.
Right. You used to be able to be friends.
You used to be able to be friends.
Now you can't.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
So what's on your radar now? Like what's a 5-year goal for you?
Everyone asks me this, and the reason why I can't have an answer to that is because if you had told me 5 years ago I'd be sitting across from Glenn Beck, both of us conservative, right? Republicans, I would have been like, you are smoking crack cocaine.
Right.
Like, so I can't say, because I almost feel like I am on some crazy magic carpet ride, and I don't know where it's being led by somebody else. I don't know where it's going to end. But I can tell you where my focus is. For first is just to wake up Black America. I think Black America is a linchpin for everything that we are trying to fight in America. Everything the left does, it all ends when Black America wakes up. And we can talk about radical feminism, which I am, as soon as I'm done with Black America, I might do it at the same time. I kind of try to kill them both, but I'm going after this radical feminist movement. And the reason why I say Black America is a linchpin is because everything starts and ends when Black people say no more. So think about any movement right now. It's crazy. Like, I'm so outwardly spoken against the trans movement. Don't even get me started. They call me like the transphobic. Give it to me. I know where this is going to end. That is one of the most dangerous things that's happening right now. Weakening men, turning men into women. It is an evil thing that's happening right now with the trans movement.
I happen to be a very religious person. And if I were the Prince of Darkness and I was thinking, how do I destroy people? I would destroy their sexuality. I would destroy their gender. I would destroy their families. I would destroy absolutely everything that is the fundamental building block of who we are. And that's what's happening. Just
the trans movement does that, like right by itself. Teaching people to mutilate themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Can't give birth, going down the line. Your families are destroyed. I mean,
there is no, I remember 20 years ago saying, it won't be long before we buy into this, this, and this. And people said, you're out of your mind. And we've long passed those things. And we're now at a place to where they destroy you if you will not accept and preach that men can have periods and babies.
They're starting to put tampons in men's restrooms. Right. The ACLU just fought for that.
So what's happening to us is, if I can get you to fall in line on something is absolutely untrue, everything else is easy.
Right. Right. And here's the thing about that, and what the left is doing, and why I will never play the game. There are even some conservatives like, if the person wants to be called this, I'll do that. I'll never do it. And here's why. If you met a person that was schizophrenic, right? And there are people that suffer from schizophrenia, and they believed in a certain reality. I actually have a stalker, and I had to get a restraining order of a person who suffers from schizophrenia. And he believes that we're in a relationship. He believes every tweet that I have. He will interpret this conversation of me and you subliminally talking about him. And then he just sends me tons of emails about what happened, right? Imagine a world where we would condone his reality. Why would we pretend to him that he actually is in a relationship with me? No, we tell him he needs to get help, right? The left is now demanding that we all pretend, right, that we're crazy. That's the right way. Like if other people see themselves as this, right? If I see myself as Glenn Beck, then everyone in here needs to start pretending that I'm Glenn Beck, right?
You are wearing his jacket.
I am wearing his jacket, right? And that's it. And that's all it takes. And then if you say, no, you're not Glenn Beck, you're the person that should be chastised. You're the person that should be run out of here. There's something wrong with you because you're a bigot, because you don't accept that I think that I'm Glenn Beck. That's called playing the crazy game. And you cannot give up even a little bit of reality. You cannot play a little bit of the crazy game before it's all gone. The slope is too slippery. The stakes are too high. So when I see a man, I don't care what he thinks he is, I acknowledge him to be a man. You know, when I see a woman and I don't care what she thinks she is, I acknowledge her to be a woman, right? Get well soon. I want you to get help. I don't think people should be, harmed because they're suffering from various disorders and diseases. But the left, what they're doing right now in trying to make things that are false, right? Patently false, to force us to accept it as reality. It is so dangerous. It is so dangerous. I
don't know why people don't understand political correctness. Just those two words are terrifying. You have to be correct with the political class. So who has power? What do they say is correct? And that's all right for you to say. That's what had Galileo locked into a tower. He would not say what the political people say is true. They are politically and factually incorrect.
Right.
You can be politically correct all you want, but that leads to a flat earth. And how people don't see that, he's not politically correct. Good.
Yeah, so the definition or a synonym for political correctness is lie. That's what it means. Political correct means lie, right? Be politically correct, lie. Right? Don't tell the truth. You need to be politically correct. Political correctness is a word for lie, right? And I won't lie, right? So there's a difference between polite, right, and political correctness. Being polite,
and we associate, too many, especially early on, associated being polite. We are polite people. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. I want to get along with everybody.
Right.
And so if that word makes you okay, but then it gets to
be crazy.
Wait, what? You're now a big beautiful butterfly and I have to call you a butterfly?
Right.
No.
It's funny because there's a story that my parents tell me when we lived when we were super poor and we were in this elevator going up to the 14th floor, which is where we lived. And I think I was 5 years old, or I was 4, and they stepped in the elevator. My mom and dad got the mail, and last second, a hand went in. The elevator was about to close, and it was a guy, and he was really, 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 really fat, like beyond, like clinically obese. I don't remember the story at all. My parents just tell me it, and instantly, my parents tightened up because kids forget it.
Oh, I know.
Forget it. So they knew, and I was hitting my dad's leg and saying, guys, pay attention. They were ignoring me, and I just said, look, he's so fat. Like he's so fat, right? So what I'm telling that story is because children naturally have no political correctness. They are the most honest people in the entire world. And parents teach them to be polite. It is impolite, right, for me to be in an elevator and tell a man that he's fat, right? But it is political correctness, which means a lie for me to look up at that man and say, you're skinny, right? That's the difference. That's
dangerous.
That's dangerous, right? That's a totally different thing to be telling people that they need to now start, playing the crazy game. So a lot of where my career is going is really focusing on a lot of what the left is doing and correlating it to Black America, because I think everything starts and ends with Black America. If you tell a Black mother that you've been calling her son Michael Susan all day at school, the whole calling kids, letting them pick her down at school ends when Black moms stand up and say enough is enough, right? Any of the radical feminist stuff, as soon as Black America says no to it, because what the left has done is they've used Black America to be able to do everything. That's why they position it to Black America first and foremost, right? Get on our side about this. This is for you, right? We're trying to help. Me Too movement. They said originally it was supposed to be about helping Black people. Everything they do is about helping Black people. Well, what happens when the victims say no, thank you? Right? Then you're looking at what it is. A bunch of rich, liberal, elitist, white Democrats that are trying to control the entire world. So remove the victim class.
I have a a good friend who used to be an intern of mine, ended up being my assistant for a while. He went to Columbia University. He was interning for me when he was in Columbia. He's a black guy, smart. And I told him when he started interning, I said, do not tell them you intern for me. Don't. And he's like, oh, I'm not a stupid man. I know that. And so he didn't say anything. His whole time, 2 years, never said anything to them. It was the last semester before he graduated. And he came in one day, and he was just shaking mad. He was so mad. And the professor had decided to use the class time to ask the students to compare me to which dictator. Would it be Pol Pot? Would it be Hitler? Would it be Mao? I mean, literally for an hour, and they discussed it. And he couldn't take it anymore. And he raised his hand, and he said, I said, oh, John, you didn't. And he said, oh, no, I knew exactly what to say that shut that conversation down. And I said, what? And he said, I raised my hand, and he said, I think he's more like Martin Luther King. And the professor, who was white, didn't know what to do, was like, okay. And they moved on.
That's it. It's true.
I mean,
that's
he just
the power.
took it away.
Yeah, that is the power that Black America has because we have been used as the victims. Yeah. As soon as the victims say no more, what are you doing? Then you just look crazy. You just look crazy. So that's really my focus. I think really, and I say you can save America if you save Black America first. That's why I believe that, because the left has given so much power to Black America, all of its power. They're completely dependent on Black America.
I want to end with this. I saw you speak. I've seen you speak on video before. From the beginning, I've watched you from afar. The difference a year has made with you is remarkable. And I saw you speak, I think, in December of last year. And I sat out in the audience and I just watched you. And I think you are one of the most powerful speakers I've seen. And I honestly believe, and I'm not going to ask you anything about this, but I honestly believe if I were the left, you're Michelle Obama in spades. I mean, you're just every hand. You're Michelle Obama. You have that kind of power. You know culture. You're well-spoken. You're smart. You're likable. I can't wait to see what you do with the opportunities you've been dealt and the work that I know you're putting in. You have a very, very long and bright future. I'm excited to see it.
That's a really huge compliment coming from you. And, just really, for me, it's just about, I don't want to let people down. I don't want to let myself down. I don't want to let my grandparents down. And I, every single day, I just put in the work. And I know I'm just at the beginning. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time and you still have to learn.
Oh my gosh, read all the time.
That's the pressure. We have to be smarter. Yeah. We have to be truer, and we have to work harder.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.